In this tutorial video, we are going to be discussing a couple suggestions that you might want to keep in mind when you're writing your resume. We've created a resume from a mock applicant named Casey. Casey applied to a client relations manager position at Whole U. The description asked for people skills, media skills, and customer service experience. As a disclaimer, let's start by clarifying that these suggestions are my opinions, so take it or leave it according to what feels right for you. There really are no right answers on one level. Ultimately, you just need to incorporate whatever feels right and leave whatever does not. So let's start off with a high-level view and then get into the nitty-gritty details. It's important to remember that whoever is reviewing your resume will likely review your resume very quickly. How quick? Well, some estimates say a couple minutes, whereas some reports claim only 6 seconds. So imagine if you had 6 seconds, what would you exclude and what would you include? I think that's a good framework to whittle your resume down to the main highlights. So I think that's why resumes are more often one page these days, because they know that our attention spans are dwindling. That's why the one-page resume is very popular. So at this point, we don't know if Casey is a male or a female, but he or she did a pretty good job at keeping their resume to one page. So go Casey. So let's get into the nitty-gritty details. Casey J. Zarnowski. First off, what do you notice is that this font is kind of funky. You want to choose a font that is very clear to your reader and easy to read. Obviously, this might be unique and stand out, but not for the right reasons. So let's highlight this and pick a font that is more readable. I myself really like Century Gothic. I actually recommend this to all of my clients because I think it's easy to read. There's a levity that I really like about it. Casey J. Zarnowski is quite a unique name, so we don't really need J as a differentiator. I think Casey Zarnowski kind of rolls better than having that J break it up. So we might as well take out the middle initial, unless you wanted to leave it in because it has some sort of valuable meaning or you like the way it sounds. But otherwise, I tend to recommend that people take out the middle initial. I try to distinguish the name. This is your professional brand, so you really want it to stand out. So I bold it, and I actually make it a little larger. I usually go around 18 font. The next thing that we notice in Casey's header is that he or she has what looks to be like a home address here. With modern technology, you don't want someone Googling where you live, and likely they're not going to be sending you a postcard or a courier pigeon, so you might as well remove your home address. Rather, they would probably contact you by phone, so I always put the brackets around the zip code. And then we see that this hotrod420@gmail.com might not sound very professional. You might want to create, if you don't have one already, create a more professional looking email address. So rather than hotrod, you could say zarnowski@gmail.com if that's available. So let's correct that. Gmail is spelt with 2 L's, so there might even be errors within your contact information. Be very careful about that because you want someone to be able to contact you. Spelling errors in general across the board are really frowned upon because a hiring manager looks at this and says, wow, if this person can't even, do a spell check and have a friend read over this, how are they going to perform in our company and do work with us? I just removed the header, and I'm actually going to paste it into the header of Word. Moving your information into a header gives you more breathing room to potentially expand and make sure that you can keep all of your information on one page. When we get into the content of Casey's resume, we see that they start with education, Success University. So there's no header here. I wouldn't really know that this is education. So you want to make things very, very clear for your reader. So I would usually bold that as a heading and put Success University. I would align these. I usually align these dates all the way to the right and just justify them. So let's do this all in one go. And I usually put spacing between the dashes and make that consistent as well. So this is kind of the painstaking part of it, but just making these consistent. It's kind of a meditative process, making everything pretty clear. And the date chronology is actually really important because an employer is going to look at this and want a snapshot of what did this person do? Have they been active and busy this whole time? The dates are now lined up. We go back to the top and make sure that 2016 is on this date line as well. Casey received a BA in Communications and a Marketing minor. We might want to put a comma and keep Marketing minor onto one sentence. Again, you're thinking, how can I save space and make this easy for the reader to digest? If you say BA in Communications, you want to be consistent with your language, then you would say minor in Marketing. I recommend bolding the proper names of educational institutions or companies that you worked at, but obviously you see that you need to correct the spacing as we go along. Make sure there's breathing room in between your title and your content. Now we go to the next line and we see that looks to be no longer education, but work experience. So work and experience, I feel like that's two words where you could really say one word. So I usually suggest to say experience. And again, we're going to bold that and make some breathing room and bold XYZ Cola. And Casey's title was Brand Ambassador. And I notice right away my eye jumps towards the next set of bullets that are down here. So I like the rounded bullets rather than these dashes. So either way, whatever you choose, you just want to be consistent. So I'm going to highlight this magic tool to make the formatting the same. Brand Ambassador. I gathered customers for the brand. Rather than I sentences, you want to start with action words. So gathered customers for the brand. And here's a good point to remind you that there is a list of action words. I recommend that you use those action verbs to make the sentences in your resume stronger. Taking out the I's, just saying ran the social media platforms for the company. I often recommend to remove the word the because I think it trips up the sentence a little bit. So you could just say ran social media platforms for company. Always less is more if possible. If the sentence is still clear, then I do recommend removing any extra words. Helped with marketing and advertising, organized and ran group training sessions for other brand ambassadors to streamline the training process. Maybe putting streamlined training process instead of the training process. Next experience is tech company, so we'll bold that to stay consistent. I sometimes see people using italics or underline to make something stand out, but I don't really like underline or italics. Again, this is just a personal preference, but I feel like it almost makes the reader have to tilt their head. So I do like when all of the font is upright and not italicized. So here in this tech company, Casey was a customer service representative, which again, that's great because it's relevant to the job they're applying to. This is good because Casey did not start sentences with I, so simply handled customer service calls and questions, helped troubleshoot tech issues, gathered information from customer service feedback forms, and also summarized the information into easy to understand suggested protocols. Well, it's kind of ironic that run-on sentence is not very easy to understand. So maybe here we could make two sentences out of one. So gathered information from customer service feedback forms, and then another bullet, because hopefully we'll make the space to still be on one page. We can just start this by saying, summarized, take out the, summarize information into easy to understand suggested protocols. So you could take out suggested because that seems redundant. Summarize information into easy to understand protocols. We could just say into protocols. Summarize information into protocols. Next work experience is at Success University. So Media Services Assistant, September 2013 to 2016. So this says coordinate, but it's obviously in the past tense because it happened couple years ago. So coordinated past tense and set up technical meetings and events for student and faculty. So student is singular. We might want to plural this because it probably wasn't a single student. Now, when something happens like that, an error, I think, okay, either this person didn't spell check, didn't check with a friend, or this person is foreign, and maybe, I'm looking at the name Zarnowski, maybe they are from Eastern Europe or some such, and English is not their first language, so should we cut them some slack? Well, not really, because if you are using English in business day to day, especially such an important document as your application, you want to have it be as accurate as possible. So coordinated and set up technical meetings and events for students and faculty. Where could we trim this down so that it's not having this little word hanging out by itself on the next page, taking up a whole sentence? I often suggest that we use an ampersand instead of and. So coordinated and set up technical meetings and events for students and faculty. Sometimes I also put slash, so coordinated / set up technical meetings and events for students and faculty. Again, past tense, booked out equipment and maintained inventory database. Past tense, assisted with any technical difficulties for students and staff members. So we could say take out any and just say with technical difficulties for student and staff, and take out members. Again, less is more. This theme keeps coming up again and again. This spacing was just taking up extra space that it didn't need to, so we can just remove that and bold this section. Say Adobe, Photoshop, Microsoft Office, Excel, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Adobe Photoshop, Microsoft Office / Excel. Excel is in the Microsoft Office family, so I think it's okay to remove that. And again, you can see how this already goes onto one line. And if you are an expert in Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn, and in this case, applying for a client relations manager position that does require use of social media, and you feel really comfortable in these platforms, I think that it is appropriate to include that list. What I see that's missing from this resume, just at first glance, is two key things. And it's almost like you can think of it like a sandwich or a hamburger. The two bread buns or pieces of bread are at the top, and all of this fixings in the middle, the lettuce, the tomato, the meat, are on the middle. But the two key pieces of bread that hold it all together are your objective statement and your interests section. And we'll bold that as well. Now, why do I think that these are so important? Couple reasons. So for interests, I have an anecdote of a client that I worked with whose resume was very finance focused. And he said, I've worked in finance all these years, and it was clear that he was very competent in his finance role. And I just thought to ask him at the end, do you have any interests, any hobbies that would set you apart? And he said, no, I can't think of anything. And I said, come on, dig a little deeper. Is there anything that you like to do on the weekends, let's say? And he said, well, I actually make music, and it's electronic dance music, and I'm a DJ, and I actually travel the world doing DJ gigs. And I was like, wow, you actually just got exponentially cooler. Not that finance guys aren't cool, but just having that story made him really, really unique. And then we could talk about maybe DJs that we like, etc. So it allows your reader to see that you are a human outside of your work, which I think you want. You want to be seen as a human with other interests and having a life. So I think interests, hobbies, I also would suggest, if you can, any service or leadership activities, and then going back up to the top to talk about objective statement. Now, you don't need to say objective statement. You could remove this and simply type in the sentence or two or paragraph or a couple bullets. However you want to format it is fine, but having a little bit of a context for who wrote this resume, who is this person, where have they been, and why are they applying to this role. This is basically your elevator pitch, but in a succinct statement that lives on your resume, maybe also on your LinkedIn or anywhere, that says, this is my professional brand. So this was a high-level look at Casey's resume. These are a couple suggestions. Again, you can continue to tweak this as much as you want, but I think that that's a really good snapshot of a one-page resume, and I would recommend to all clients to continue to fine-tune the wording and the formatting as you go along throughout your career. But these days, keeping it to one page is always a great idea. So good luck with your resume writing.